Here are a few out-of-context moments from Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. A young woman walks along the edge of a roof while chugging a bottle of vodka. A demon communicates with a young man via wall mural graffiti. A frat guy gives another frat guy the worst lap dance ever. A character's deceased father begins speaking to her through a cell phone video. This happens.
Truth or dare?
This also happens. People have been really hard on this movie, and while there are definitely some valid criticisms, I believe a lot of it was unfair. While it's not a masterpiece by any means, I'm hoping you'll give me the opportunity to convince you to give it a chance, because it is a legitimately fun, well-crafted horror with a couple good scares.
First glance, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare pretty much seems like any other generic, teen-oriented slasher-style horror. And if you haven't seen it already, I bet you're already thinking you can guess exactly how it goes. You're probably sitting there thinking, oh, I get it. Some haunted thing makes them play truth or dare, and then slowly they get killed off one by one until only the final girl is left and she somehow manages to defeat it. Now, what if I told you that is not what happens? I'm not going to lie to you and say that it doesn't follow any tropes of the genre. In fact, it follows a lot of them. But I think this movie actually puts a few really underrated, interesting spins on what is effectively the and then there were none slasher genre. And just to make the plot discussion flow a little smoother when I get into it, I'm going to tell you the names and archetypes of each of the characters now, so at least you have a good idea going in.
Olivia, the main character and final girl. Marky, the rebellious best friend. Brad, the gay best friend. Lucas, the hunky crush. Tyson, the arrogant asshole. Penelope, the flirty drunk girl. Ronnie, the horny jackass.
All right, with that brief introduction out of the way, let's get into the plot of the movie, shall we? I dare you to stay for the whole thing.
The movie starts with a young woman entering a gas station, and right away we can see she's on edge. When the attendant turns around to get cigarettes, something happens, and though we don't know what's going on, she obviously does. Crying, she pleads, "Not again." But there's a hard cut. When we snap back, she's walking down an aisle to grab a bottle of lighter fluid and a box of matches. And then, with a whispered apology, she lights a random stranger on fire.
I personally think this is such a strong cold open. So much like my gal Swell Entertainment, okay, we're not friends, but just shh, I'm just a fan. I love a good pre-title card kill in a horror movie. And I think that this one really perfectly sets the stage for the rest of the movie. And just to get it out of the way now, I know that there is a lot of discourse about the Snapchat filter. It's one of the characters' words, not mine, on the characters when they're under the influence of the curse. And I'm going to get to my thoughts on that later, but I wanted to bring it up here because I thought it was a really good idea that in the cold open, they don't show you the attendant's face. You only hear the sort of distorted voice to know that's what's happening. And now we meet our protagonist and final girl, Olivia, played by Lucy Hale of Pretty Little Liars fame, and who I constantly confuse with both Selena Gomez and Ariel Winter.
She's finishing a video for her popular YouTube channel where she vlogs about things like how she's going to be using her spring break to build habitats for humanity.
All right, I'll admit it. The movie does get a little bit ham-fisted about showing how Olivia is such a good person, like the best person, always looking out for everybody else. And obviously, there is a reason for that, and I'll get into it. But I do understand that in storytelling, especially in a movie, you have to take certain shortcuts to establish a character's personality because you only have so much time. But again, like anybody can be a critic, but storytelling is really hard. So just keep that in mind.
This is our last spring break ever. Since high school, you and I haven't spent more than a week away from each other. This is our last chance to have some fun before life tears us apart.
When guilt doesn't work, Marky admits she already went and canceled Olivia's spot on the Habitat for Humanity trip. But to karmically even things out, all the others agree to go with her to build houses on a different trip.
All right, so I think we can all admit that changing anybody's travel plans without telling them is objectively a terrible thing to do. But in this movie, it does lead into what I think is one of the funniest lines of the movie.
I mean, your feeble set of hands for 1 week, or all of ours for 2. I mean, you're really just being selfish if you don't come with us.
The group spends a typical movie style spring break in Mexico, and through montage, we land at their last night. Olivia catches Marky grinding on some random guy and distracts Lucas before he sees her, then pulls Marky away from the stranger. No good deed goes unpunished. Rescuing Marky put Olivia in the sightline of Ronnie, a guy she used to know from school who's pretty creepy and wants to hook up with her.
Enter a handsome stranger who's named Carter, and he saves Olivia by threatening to fight Ronnie if he doesn't get lost. Luckily, Ronnie does choose to leave, and Olivia and Carter sit down to have a drink. And after a little bit of back and forth, maybe a little flirting, he says that him and his friends found this really cool secret place, and he wants to know if she and her friends want to go see it. I don't actually know the actor playing Carter from anything else, but to me, he looks like a combination of Daniel Radcliffe and Daniel Bruhl. Man, I love me some Daniel Bruhl. Anyways, here's where we're getting into the main conceit of the movie.
Carter leads them to a spooky abandoned church. I think they call it a mission, but I think a mission is a church. I should Google this, but as I'm writing it in the script, and as I'm recording it right now, I know I'm not going to. Everyone seems keen to leave, but since Olivia agreed to hang out with Carter, she makes them hang back, and when they say there's nothing to do here, Carter suggests they play truth or dare.
Look, I know I'm going into a lot of detail right now, okay? But part of why I'm doing this is to actually do a very sincere and genuine defense of this movie. And part of what makes this movie so good is that all this stuff from the early scenes ends up paying off later in the movie. And in order to make you appreciate it, appreciate all the work that goes into foreshadowing all the stuff in your story, I have to kind of lay it all out for you. Things will start moving faster once people start dying, believe me.
Brad, trying to be a good friend, starts the game by asking Olivia. She picks truth. He asks the question, if aliens invaded and told you to pick between killing the entire population of Earth, but we would all get to live, or the entire population of Earth gets to live, but they would kill all of us, which would you pick? To the sound of her friends' groans and jeers, Olivia says she's sorry, she loves them, but she would obviously pick saving the population of Earth because it's just a few lives compared to billions. The next few rounds go by like any game of truth or dare you've ever played. People kissing, dumb stunts, embarrassing stories. But when it comes to Carter, and he picks truth, he gets playfully asked what his intentions are with Olivia, and his answer is weird.
No, not that kind of weird, ya perverts. To summarize Carter's answer, He needed to find a group of friends to play truth or dare with him because you can only add people to the game in the place where the game started, and he and his friends started it in the spooky church. And most importantly, once you're asked, you're in. And at the end of his little explanation speech, he adds on that Olivia seemed like such a pushover. He knew it would be easy to manipulate her to bring all her friends and Ronnie to the church.
He runs away. Everyone gets mad at Olivia, and Marky is extra mad because Tyson made a shitty comment about how Olivia has a crush on Lucas, and Marky is cold for the rest of the night. So they get back home, and nothing bad, well, nothing cursed, has happened yet. Marky and Olivia make up after Olivia assures her that there's nothing going on with Lucas.
I'm going to mention something now because there's a lot of plot threads woven through the movie. And if I tried to break every single one down minute to minute as I went through this plot, we would be here forever. And so I am going to just point out a couple things ahead of time so that it flows a little nicer. It's made very obvious to us, the audience, that Marky is very prone to cheating on Lucas. And Olivia has been covering up for her and keeping this secret mostly because Olivia has her own secret that she's been keeping from Marky. And so, because of that guilt, she feels obligated to keep Marky's secret, even though she feels bad for Lucas. The other thing I wanted to mention here is that we learn quite early on that Marky's father has recently died by suicide. One last note here, I noticed this bizarre, almost anachronistic line that came up during Olivia and Marky's like makeup conversation. And I'm going to get to it at the end when I talk about like my bigger thoughts outside the movie's plot. But I just wanted to say that there are some odd writing moments, but that doesn't take away from how actually good this movie is. For now, let's get to our first truth or dare moment.
As Olivia enters the college library, random students, whose faces have been contorted into the CGI smile I mentioned earlier, begin asking her truth or dare, closing in until she chooses truth.
What secret does your best friend make you hide?
Marky's constantly cheating on Lucas.
So, like I was just saying, the reason I'm still going into so much detail right now is because a lot of these little things early in the movie are like Chekhov's guns, if you will. And it really feels like the movie rewards you for paying attention to like more than just what's being directly told to you. It actually lays out a lot of things in advance, and I really like that. It's like in a classic three-act structure, you introduce the audience to something, you remind the audience of that thing, and then by the end, you have used the thing. Point being is that having something pay off is what makes an audience feel good by the end. So lately, I feel, and this is just my opinion, although I feel like it is also a very lukewarm take, um, is that I feel like too many movies, especially in like horror and thriller genres, are so much trying to outsmart the audience and trying to do something that the audience can't predict, that it becomes more important to give them a twist that they weren't expecting than it was to write a cohesive story that actually satisfies. And like, obviously, you do have to hide some stuff from the audience when you're making a movie. Like, that's how story elements work. You have to keep some things a mystery. However, you also have to make the story make sense. And it feels like over the last few years, especially, we've been getting a lot of things where plot elements just feel like they've been like coming out of nowhere because the writers are more concerned about making sure that there's no way you could have known. And the reason there's no way you could have known is because it doesn't often make sense.
I'm bringing this up because nobody in the friend group believes Olivia Tyson giving her a prescription for Xanax. She tells him he's not a real doctor, and he disagrees while showing his fancy doctor name pen.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention before that Tyson is in his final year of med school and he has been selling illegal prescriptions to underclassmen.
Ronnie is out at a billiards bar, pulling the same creepy stuff on the girls there as he did at the resort. He gets his truth or dare, and he thinks that the girl doing it is just being flirty. He picks dare, and the dare is for him to show the entire bar his penis.
What follows is probably my favorite moment in the movie and also quite possibly the funniest moment.
I will do you all the honor of showing you my business.
Seen it before, not impressed.
What is that, Beth?
No, but Beth said it was tiny too.
After the exchange, Ronnie gets mad and zips his pants up.
Fatality.
Olivia goes downstairs to find Brad, Penelope, and Tyson, and shortly thereafter, all of them get a text at the exact same time with a link to a video of Ronnie's death.
Bad break. It's a pool joke.
That's so funny.
Meanwhile, Lucas listens to Olivia's explanation of what happened in the library, but doesn't believe her. However, as he's walking home, he starts seeing Truth or Dare everywhere. He calls her back after maybe a few hours and says he believes her now. When Olivia asks what he picked, Lucas says truth, and then confesses he's had feelings for her since they met. It's followed up by an even funnier moment when Marky walks through the front door.
Thank you for coming. I live here.
I mean, I know I have no taste and maybe not a good sense of humor, I don't know, but I was laughing.
Around this point, we see some doctors declare an elderly woman deceased. Where's the room with that old lady's corpse? Oh, of course, it's in the same hallway as the vending machines, where Brad is now getting some snacks.
Okay, so based on that, you're probably expecting that there are jump scares here. And there are. But they're actually both really good. I jumped out of my skin both times. So I know that a lot of people find jump scares cheap, and they often largely are. However, sometimes they are good, especially when they are used sparingly, and this movie does use them sparingly.
Now that the others are willing to believe, they work out that whatever is happening in the same order they played Truth or Dare in the church, and Tyson is going to be next. They call him, but there's no answer because he has an interview to become a resident or whatever, doctor at the hospital.
He was the most skeptical about the idea of something supernatural happening, which, remember how I talked about movies using shorthand to convey character personalities? Well, a very good shorthand for intelligence and being like a science brain person is being skeptical of the supernatural.
Inside the interview room, Tyson is wrapping up, but right before he leaves, the curse shows up in the woman interviewing him. He thinks she's joking, that his friends put her up to this. He's asked about the whole selling prescriptions to juniors thing. Obviously, he lies, and that means he fails.
So, remember how I said that this movie is really good at using Chekhov's gun? Yeah, so remember Tyson's special doctor's pen?
Fatality.
Penelope is inconsolable after Tyson's death and gives herself what is basically alcohol poisoning by trying to drink her feelings away.
Pro tip, if you are still drunk and you start throwing up, it's highly likely that you're starting to get alcohol poisoning. So you need to stop drinking immediately and make sure you have somebody ready to go get help if that happens to you. Please drink safely, friends.
Marky, Olivia, and Brad convene to talk about how they can stop this. They can't find anyone on Facebook named Carter, who they figure is the best person because he understood the rules of the game, so they Google about deaths in Mexico instead, and find a news article with the security footage of the young woman from the cold open lighting that other customer on fire. They find the girl, her name is Giselle, on Facebook, and Olivia tries to act nice, but Marky then changes to threatening to hurt her family if she doesn't meet with them, and that's how they actually get her to respond. Upstairs, Penelope wakes up needing to puke, so she runs to the bathroom. Afterwards, she goes to wash her face in the sink, leans over it, and when she stands up again, her reflection is still leaning over the sink.
I cannot explain to you folks just how much this kind of thing activates some kind of like deep, primal lizard brain fear inside of me. There's something about horror with mirrors, doppelgangers, reflections of any kind. Ah,
There's a commotion on the roof, and everyone runs outside to see Penelope, in her pajamas, barefoot, walking around the edge, while still holding the big bottle of vodka she'd been drinking earlier. She yells down to them that she was dared to walk along the edge of the roof until she finishes the whole bottle. In a panic, Olivia asks why she didn't just pick truth, and Penelope says she tried, and it wouldn't let her.
here's where we have our first real twist in the movie. For a reason that the characters don't yet know but are about to find out, the game will only allow them to pick truth twice in a row before the next person has to pick dare.
Penelope is sure she can finish the dare, so the others run inside and grab one of their mattresses, and they start carrying it underneath where she's walking like some old-timey firemen, which is a good plan until they run into a locked gate with bars that are comically sharp on top. So they can't seem to break the lock. Olivia runs to Marky's SUV and uses it like a battering ram against the gate. So, of course, Penelope loses her balance right as she finishes the bottle, but luckily, Olivia gets the gate down just in time, and the others manage to get the mattress on top of the SUV, where Penelope lands with a thud, alive.
So all five of them pile into the SUV. I think I also forgot to mention that Lucas was up on the roof with Penelope to grab her if she started to fall, even though she knew that that would cause the dare to fail. Anyways, Lucas was there.
It's far enough. Tell us what's happening.
Which one of you is Olivia?
You answer our question first. How do you know Carter?
They ask her about Carter, and for a second, she doesn't seem to know the name, even though she was part of the friend group. Then she's like, "Oh, yeah, right, Carter," which puts them on edge.
They managed to get at least some answers out of her, including why the game wouldn't let Penelope pick truth. And apparently, this is because since their group of friends were the ones who started up this round of the curse, they were playing two truths and a dare. And so I guess due to the fact that the game started that way, now everybody else pulled into this current round of the game is forced to do only two truths in a row before the next person has to dare. It's mostly learned through like pieces that you put together in the meta narrative that the reason the game is using those specific truth or dare rules is because when Giselle and Carter's group of friends broke into the church and Carter broke the altar that had been sealing away this curse. That is why they became responsible for the curse. And so it attached itself to just whatever they were doing.
Olivia suddenly wonders why Giselle is being so honest with them and realizes just a second too late that she's still part of the game and it's her turn. And she picked Dare. It dared her to kill Olivia. She whips out a gun and shoots, but Penelope throws herself in front of Olivia and takes the bullet to her gut instead.
Fatality.
Bless this actress's heart, but when Penelope died, she literally made a like bleh sound, and that was very funny.
Because you only get one chance, Giselle immediately fails.
Fatality.
I believe that this is a really underrated moment in the movie that represents just this moment of like a huge amount of character growth for both Penelope and Olivia. And for Penelope, even though she dies, it's like good character growth. And for Olivia, even though she lives, it's bad character growth. And I'm going to explain it, don't you worry, but I'm going to explain it once we get to the end of the plot, so just bear with me a little longer.
Olivia is getting desperate, so they do more research into the actual mission. They find out that it used to house young orphan girls, and that it was closed after the priest was found murdered. One of the orphans, now an elderly woman, is living with her niece or granddaughter, I can't remember, and Olivia and Lucas drive back to Mexico to try to speak with her. After some convincing, she agrees to ask the woman to hear them out. The niece granddaughter tells them that the woman has not spoken a word in 50 years. They wait outside the house, and right when they're about to give up, the niece granddaughter comes to call them inside. She explains that all the time was the old woman was writing something down for Olivia specifically, and even she was not allowed to read it.
And now we finally find out just exactly what is going on with this cursed game.
The girls at the mission were being abused by the priest, so they played games to take their minds off of it. Eventually, one of the girls just couldn't take it anymore, and she became a witch who could cast a spell and make all their pain stop. Sadly, black magic is risky, and this little girl woke up a demon of mischief named Calyx, who did solve their priest problem, but then forced them to play their silly games for life and death stakes. Each one of the girl's friends died. Of course, Olivia asks how she survived, and she tells them that the only way to stop the game is to perform the reversal ritual at the mission, and the person who woke the demon has to make a sacrifice in order to seal it away. A sacrifice of flesh.
I guess this is the point where I should mention that another one of those things that I didn't bring up because it wasn't really relevant. The police are like investigating all these mysterious deaths, first from Carter and Giselle's group of friends, and then from Olivia's group of friends. And the way that they are able to track down Carter, since they couldn't do it with Giselle, because, uh, yeah.
The group runs into Brad's father, who, remember, is a police officer. He asks to talk to his dad outside, but his turn comes around and he's dared to steal his dad's gun and make him get on his knees and beg for his life. Brad tells his dad he loves him, hugs him, and then steals the gun and says that he'll explain afterwards. Tragically, his dad thinks Brad is doing this because he failed as a parent, and he keeps trying to talk gently to his son instead of just begging like he needs to.
You'd think this would count as failing the challenge, right? Well, actually, no.
Another police officer comes around the corner and sees only a guy holding another cop at gunpoint.
Fatality.
It's through a conversation with the chief of police that Olivia is able to find out that Carter is actually named Sam, and with that information, I think she and her friends are able to track him down to an empty apartment where he's been hiding out.
But he refuses to leave with them to go back to the church. So Olivia pulls the gun on him to force him into the SUV.
Huh? What? I didn't mention where Olivia got a gun? Right. Okay. So, sorry, I think I may have actually blocked this part out because it's actually kind of definitely a dumb part of the movie and it didn't really fit in with my defense, but I have to bring it up because it's kind of critical to explain why there's a gun now. So, you know how I said that Marquis was struggling with her father's recent self-inflicted death? That's not the dumb part. Don't worry, that's not the dumb part. The dumb part is apparently she managed to keep the gun and had it in a shoebox in her closet. And, like, look, I understand that it's valid and real to have suicidal ideation, and I understand that those feelings don't necessarily mean that you ever plan on following through, but I just find it like, okay, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief so far for movies. I am a lover of fantasy. You guys know this. I will suspend my disbelief for old movies, for bad effects, whatever, right? But I just can't buy that the police would investigate the death of a mentally ill man and then give his mentally ill daughter the gun and the ammo and just be like, here you go, store this in a shoebox. You can just hang on to that. Like, no.
Anyway, Olivia walks in on Marky holding the gun due to all the Olivia and Lucas stuff I probably didn't talk about. Olivia talks her down by finally confessing the secret she's been hiding for the whole movie. And buckle up for this. There was a night that Olivia was at their house and ended up alone with Marky's dad. She cried to him about a breakup or something. He comforted her and served her wine. And if you couldn't guess where this was headed, started to touch Olivia. I know you're thinking, but actually, no. She rejected him. He pleaded with her to keep the secret, saying that if it got out, he'd have to die. And out of the entire situation, the piece of the story that Olivia was most afraid of Marky finding out was that in her anger, she yelled at him that his family would be better off if he was dead. She thinks that because of that, she directly caused his death.
This is pretty much instantly resolved by Marky admitting that her dad had been mentally ill his entire life, that he had recently gone off his medication before it occurred, and that he had previously already survived an attempt on his own life. And so after that, like, Olivia's guilt basically just evaporates and they're good. Let's go fight the curse. Okay, then.
With Sam still at gunpoint, they drive back to Mexico again and force him to kneel down in the church where they'd been playing Truth or Dare. He's confused, but they really don't have time to explain. Olivia gives him one of the pages that the old lady wrote for her. It's the reversal spell to seal Calyx away. He has to read it 7 times and then make the sacrifice. He has to cut out his tongue. Calyx obviously doesn't want him to be able to complete the spell, so the church starts breaking apart and falling down. If that wasn't enough, Lucas's turn comes up, and he's dared to either kill Olivia or Marky, so he tries to leave the mission to avoid doing either. However, this counts as a failure, and he gets possessed, then walks back inside where Sam has just started cutting out his tongue.
Fatality.
You know, I don't think that at any point they established that being possessed by the Truth or Dare curse gives you super strength. But since super strength is a pretty typical part of being possessed in the genre, I'll let it slide.
Fatality.
Now Sam is dead. They can't reverse the ritual since the only person who can complete the sacrifice is the one who woke up the demon, which Sam did by smashing the altar when him and his friends were playing. They need a new plan. Olivia thinks of something and then tells Marky when she gets her turn she needs to refuse to complete it, even though their friendship is fractured. To show that it's repaired now, Marky agrees.
Honestly, I think Olivia's plan is pretty badass. She's definitely smarter than I am.
She's dared to shoot Olivia. She's immediately possessed by Calyx. Olivia grabs her arm and pulls it downwards, resulting in her getting shot, and therefore Marky has technically succeeded.
Truth or Dare? I'm not in this game.
No, once you're asked, you're in. Those are the rules, right? So truth or dare, asshole.
He concedes to this and picks truth, so Olivia asks for the answer she's been searching for this whole time.
How do we get out of this game alive?
You can't.
What a twist!
The ultimate truth is that the demon can only be sealed away by the person who woke him up, and with Sam dead, they can't complete the ritual. The only option to put him back to sleep is Olivia and Marky keep playing, knowing Calyx will make them kill each other or themselves.
Yeah, so that's it. It's over. That's all. It's done. Oh, no, wait. There is actually one more way for them to survive.
Olivia pulls out her phone and then opens her YouTube channel, then hits the Go Live button. Yeah, because they're still inside the mission, they can add new players to the game there. As we're shown a montage of people around the world watching her live stream, we hear Olivia summarize the events of the movie we just watched to her YouTube audience. And for the very last line of the movie, she apologizes and then asks,
Truth or dare?
So that was Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. And overall, it has pretty bad ratings from both critics and audiences, but I think they're too hard on it. You know, lots of people have opinions. I'm pretty sure that channel How to Beat has an angry looking video about how you can't beat this movie. I haven't watched the video, but it just had the language of, anyways, never mind. Here's the thing. I don't actually care what movies people like or don't like. That is a matter of personal taste. What fascinates me about this particular movie's bad reception is the why. The why people were so mad about this movie specifically. Because like there are a lot of horror movies where by the end the characters haven't defeated the thing causing the horror, and some where it's left extremely ambiguous whether or not it's actually over. And no, I don't mean like obvious sequel bait stuff or really long running franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. I mean stuff like The Cabin in the Woods, where there is legitimate, like, oh no, like there's no beating this kind of deal. So, what I think actually made people mad is a lot more complex and presumably subconscious because not that many people are actually malicious, but a lot of people don't take any time to examine why they're having feelings about certain things, and they don't look inside themselves to think about what their reactions truly mean. And I think that that comes into play with this movie. But first, I want to go back to that character growth moment that I mentioned. So when Penelope takes the bullet for Olivia, she is actually really changing as a person because in the movie, Penelope was really portrayed as this sort of selfish, careless, really not thinking at all about the well being of others or even caring if other people were safe. And then when it came down to the most critical moment, when she needed to decide what was most important to her, she chose her friend. And I think that the fact that she had just survived her dare and then ended up dying as a result of something unrelated to her is this beautifully tragic character moment. And I just wanted to appreciate that. Olivia, on the other hand, is completely broken by this moment. I think that Penelope's death is the moment where Olivia snaps and she changes from that self sacrificing person who is so good and would give anything for anyone else. And she starts putting herself first in all of it. When you have final girls, often they're sort of not bland, but they're often meant to be projected upon so that you can sort of have that thrill experience. And while they're often smart, there just often isn't a lot of like dimension or change that's able to happen within one movie, even sometimes within a series of movies. And so the fact that, Penelope to a lesser degree, but the fact that they were able to have Olivia change into a worse person by the end of the movie, a person who films at the church and chooses her and her friends' lives over the entire rest of the world, presumably, um, based on how it spreads. I don't really actually completely know. I mean, it's not important. What's important is that these things make it feel a lot less like some generic, flavorless slasher style teen flick, right? Anyway, just to wrap up what I was saying about why I think people really hated this movie, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, this is a very girly movie. And people hate things that girls like. And I know maybe you're thinking that I'm crazy and you're like, how is this a girly movie? Like, this is not Barbie. And no, it's not. But when you think of the types of horror that women like, and you look at all the individual elements that make up this movie, you can see exactly who the target audience is. We have an actually aspirational final girl who is motivated and relatable. We have a plot that centers heavily around the weight of the concept of like being best friends and friendship. There's witchcraft, there's cathartic revenge on a wicked man, there's both boy and girl kissing, and of course, the power fantasy ending. Because even the most good girls of us all have definitely had those days where we would pick our friends above the whole population of Earth, I think. So let's just have some quick lighter thoughts before I wrap up all of this and give you a takeaway. If you want to recommend this movie to somebody but you don't know who you should recommend it to, I would say that anybody who likes the Final Destination movies would really like this movie. I could also compare some of what is going on in the movie to The Happening, but nobody should love The Happening. That movie needs to die alone and with no friends. Do not love The Happening. Oh, right. I mentioned that line I found a little bit weird and anachronistic in the Marky Olivia makeup conversation. So Marky says the line, I know things have been a little Betty and Joan between us. And I was like, Betty and Joan. Like, unless Marky is some kind of like classic art film and golden age cinema buff, like, it's highly unlikely that she would make this reference. Like, even saying things have been a little Betty and Veronica between us would make more sense and feels like a more topical reference. This movie came out in 2018. Were 20-year-old women really referencing Betty Davis and Joan Crawford? Like, don't get me wrong, queens, idols, all of the respect. But like, guys, Betty and Joan, really? I guess Tyler Posey, who played Lucas, is the star of that show Teen Wolf, which I haven't watched, but I think I remember people enjoying it. Another one of those things that I'm pretty sure was aimed at women, and people were like, this is stupid because nobody likes anything that women like because people hate women. Now, as somebody who is approaching this with the mentality of maybe it's not because they hate women or hate things that women like, this movie's real sin, the flaw that I can really like acknowledge is that it's actually just trying to do way too much in too little time. Like, I'm an author, and I didn't think that I would ever be complaining about a story having too many three-dimensional characters, but because this movie tries to give each and every one of the ensemble cast their own dedicated plot thread. There's a lot going on, and like there are entire scenes that I just skipped over because I was like, there isn't time. The point being that when the story feels cluttered, that can be a real point of friction for some people. So if that's the case, then I can feel more empathy for them. And just on that note, the whole thing with Brad is like, love having gay characters. Don't necessarily love the trope of the gay male best friend of the final girl because like there is a kind of mold happening that people are not just that mold. I'm getting off track here. The actual thing I wanted to say about Brad is that I think his story was actually too dark for this kind of movie. Like, as much as I'm doing this defense of it because I think it has some really good underrated moments and I think not enough people gave it a legitimate chance, I also can say that like it's like a light horror movie. It's like you don't really see that much. It's probably PG-13. Um so having like this whole like closeted lying to my dad and then like the whole like gun getting on your knees and begging, like that's so dark. That's really dark. And so I just wonder if maybe like again they were just trying to do too much and it ended up actually hurting them where they were trying to do a good thing. All right, let's finally talk about the CGI effect, the Snapchat filter, the smile that occurs as a visual cue for the curse being in effect. Remember, I was talking about shortcuts for establishing personalities? Right. Well, this might sound kind of mean, but it's not it meant to. It's just like a function of the human brain. The way human brains work is sometimes we can't easily put pieces together unless there are cues, like a visual cue or an auditory cue. That's why things like Pavlov like can somewhat work on humans because like conditioning is a real thing and it can anyways, I'm getting off track again. The smile and the distorted voice were like the cue for the audience that Calyx was in possession of whatever person is asking, right? And I think that if the movie didn't have that, it would have been worse off because like what else would they have done? Like, I know that in stills and in screenshots, it looks really goofy with the smiles, but in motion, they're actually not as silly as they seem. In summary, some of the issues with this movie's reception can be attributed to not just disliking what women like, but also just to the current media landscape where everybody believes that tearing something down makes them smarter and that disliking things makes them cool. And not just that, but it's like they just are ready to tear media apart if it doesn't fit in this very specific box of what they've defined as good. And I just think that a lot of people are missing out on what could be some really enjoyable experiences because they're getting so hung up on what their own personal criteria of good is that they're closing themselves off. And like I said in the beginning, I'll say it again at the end. Blumhouse's Truth or Dare is no masterpiece, okay? This kind of horror movie is the best kind to watch with friends. I would say that it's a fantastic movie for Halloween parties, slumber parties. Um, it's a movie where you don't necessarily have to pay attention to every second to get what's going on. So that's why I think it's a good movie for, laughs and maybe getting drunk. Drink responsibly, though. I also think that this could be a really good movie if you have a child or a sibling or a nibbling who is in that preteen age where they're ready to get into horror, but you don't want to introduce them to too much real gore and boobies yet. There isn't any boobies. There is some side boobie, like you get like a side shot of Lucy Hale's naked body. I didn't even go into it 'cause it's not worth it. But the point is that I think that Truth or Dare is a really fun movie for like somebody who hasn't had a lot of experience with horror yet. Of course, thank you so much to everybody for listening. I hope you'll consider maybe subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed, or at least leaving a like behind. It really helps. And I hope you'll join me for the next video where I will be removing my face to reveal my real lizard person head.